in the B2B realm, I think we need to remember two things. That even though we call it B2B, but at the end of the day, there is a human behind the B.
Yes.
And it's not just one human, it's a committee, it's a
Yeah.
collective.
Yeah.
So you need to find ways to convince and influence not a human, but a collective group of decision makers who are humans. If the content doesn't evoke emotion, I don't think you're doing justice.
Welcome to Influence Unlocked, a candid conversation series with B2B thought leaders who are building an industry voice that is honest, thought provoking, and impactful. Hello, I'm Arun, co founder of Influence, a B2B marketing consultancy. In B2B, credibility isn't built overnight. It is built, or rather earned, through years of experience, decisions, and having a very consistent point of view. Our guest today has been doing just that. He's a serial entrepreneur and community builder, having built and exited his own digital marketing business, and now supporting and backing founders across Southeast Asia as an angel investor and president of TIE Singapore. Welcome to Influence Unlocked, Prantik. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much. We've met and known each other for so long. I'm glad we're doing this. And at the outset, I want to say again that I think what Pauline and you are building, I think that's brilliant because it's genuinely the need of the hour. So looking forward to the chat.
You have built a very convincing public profile, as well as, created your own business and seeing it right through the acquisition. In that journey, when did you realize that your voice was becoming a part of the company's trust building process?
Yeah, it's a great place to start. I'll sort of backtrack. So post my undergraduate in NUS, I had a sort of couple of stints before I started co-founded Happy Marketer. And I think the answer probably lies somewhere in that phase when I look back. So I started with Enterprise Singapore, what was then known as IE Singapore, International Enterprise Singapore, where my role was to market a couple of industries of Singapore overseas. And I also looked at foreign direct investments into India. Uh, and during that process, I would sort of get a chance to network, engage, and lead, delegations, meet business leaders from either large companies like Singtel, or you would have a lot of tech startups from Singapore back in the pre-iPhone era. I think that was also a period where I started observing some of these leaders, where one thing that I noticed was, especially in B2B businesses, these large tech businesses, and especially if you're a young company, the founder profile is what is the sort of the biggest driving force in terms of building trust and credibility, because there is no corporate brand. So that was my first sort of in hindsight. And I think that sort of somewhere seeped down within me. Of course, when we were studying technopreneurship in NUS, you always looked up to people like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, who were, of course, running very large companies. But you also looked at these strong personas in tech who were literally the face of the business. The other sort of point was, post my IE Singapore journey, I had joined a brand consulting firm, a B2B brand consulting firm, a company called Strategy.com, which eventually got sold to PwC. I think there, these experiences got crystallized through certain frameworks, because we used to advise B2B companies on their brand building journeys. And truth be told, we looked at both the good and the bad side of this phenomena, because if the persona is too strong and too good, there's a risk, because if something happens to that person, or if that person is maligned, or that person has to leave, then the corporate brand suffers as well. But when I sort of now look back, I think these experiences shaped that thought, that when we were starting Happy Marketer, both Rachit and I realized that at the end of the day, customers are going to trust us. And again, I wouldn't say accident, but just by sheer persona, Rachit was someone who liked to be sort of behind the scenes. I was anyway driving business development partnerships. So then I think some of that was theoretical, some of that was through practical observation. So I think somewhere in that 5-6 year period, I think that thought process seeped in, that the it is going to be founder led, which means we have to be mindful about what that means, at the same time authentic. But we were quite sure by 2010, 2011, a couple of years into our journey, that customers were willing to engage us because of us.
Right.
And the Happy Marketer brand, hence over time, had to sort of be built around our personality. But we tried our best to sort of diversify, so that it was not just a person, there was me, there was Rachit. Over time, we had a few other people who sort of took over different functions. So I think the persona-led B2B brand building, I think, is something we experienced, and we were quite conscious within 2 to 3 years that that's what's going to drive our future. But what we tried our best, A, is to be as real, authentic, but to also diversify across a few people. Uh, and honestly, that shaped a lot of things in terms of our organizational culture, what kind of people we wanted to hire. We can talk more about it, but it's shaped, I think, before the happy marketer journey began.
Talking about persona and authenticity, when you think of a B2B influencer, KOL, thought leader today, what are the first few qualities that come to mind?
Yeah, I'll give you my lens and perspective on the whole B2B influencer thought leader piece. I think today, and I'll maybe start with a critical point of view. Today, what I see, the general understanding and what I see on the digital fora is what I feel it's manufactured credibility, too much focus on polish. You can have a LinkedIn post with a beautiful photograph of a man or a woman, which could be from a holiday, which may have no relation to the content, but get 1,000 likes. And that may feel like, wow, this person is an influencer. True, as far as vanity metrics is concerned, reach is concerned, you're gamifying the algorithm. But I'm not sure that is true, authentic influence. Because if you unpack that, one of the two things that I sort of measure when I look at, content like that or influencer posts like that, my two sort of litmus tests are: if I meet this person in reality, A, would he or she be able to speak or carry that persona as what is seen on digital? In very many often cases, that's not the case. I think they're very good in shaping that polished digital persona to drive reach by gaming the algorithm. B, do they have substance to sort of back up that credibility? Do they have real stories? Are they taking a point of view? To me, I think a lot of people who create that sort of a persona very often are not willing to pay the price for credibility. What is their opinion? Are they sticking their neck out when, for example, there's a certain calamity happening, there's a certain war going on, there's a certain protest going on? Are they willing to be genuinely real? Are they willing to take a stance? Very often they don't. So that's my critical lens of what I see, apart from AI slop. But to me, I think the flip side is I genuinely, enjoy following people who are doers, who are willing to stick their neck out and take a stance on a debate or a divisive matter, and who can back that up in a real life interaction. To me, that is real, authentic, true thought leadership than just digital posts which look beautiful.
Completely agree with you on that, and which also kind of makes you think about the power of community,
Yeah.
because credibility doesn't exist without community, right? And we've seen the power of communities in recent times. So the question to you is, what is the role of community in building that B2B influence?
That's a beautiful one. To me, it's extremely, extremely important that leaders are part of a community. Either they start a community or they join a community. But again, the trick is, or the magic is, if someone is genuinely doing that with heart. And again, the litmus test for me is Arun or Prantik or Pauline, are they part of this community because of a title that they hold, because of something that they're gaining out of it, or are they net givers? I'll give you two examples from sort of my journey. One, so today I'm sort of blessed to be part of this community called TIE, right, which is a not-for-profit community that helps entrepreneurs, right?
Exactly.
I happen to have the privilege of being the chairperson for the Singapore chapter. But if most people feel that, oh, I'm only showing up because of my title, which is, for a 2 to 3 year term, then there's something wrong. The question will be, am I still participating, contributing? Am I a net giver even after my title's gone? Right? Or was I giving anyway before I got this title? So to me, I think that is very, very critical for anyone who's part of a community or leading a community. I'll give you another example of a B2B community or a initiative that we were part of in Singapore, which had to do with, this is about a decade ago, about training young Singaporeans or professionals in digital marketing, right? Now, if that was seen or that was my angle of gaining leads or generating leads, now that's honestly speaking, it was a very good byproduct, but that was not the original or that was not the real goal. The real goal was, can we go to polys, unis, and fresh
Right.
graduates and train them so that when they come out to industry, it benefits the larger cause.
Your heart has
So
to be
heart
there.
has to be there. And honestly, it's visible. If you spend time with someone over a year or two, are they doing it for the content? Are they doing it for the likes or the titles? And again, I'm not being too critical, look, to each their own, but I think community, to your broader question, is critical, because if you do this genuinely, I think there's a lot of satisfaction, there's a lot of purpose and benefit that you gain, you learn from the community benefits, it's mutually beneficial, but it also genuinely helps your brand. But again, as long as that's a good byproduct.
Yeah. Talking about brands, as a marketing discipline, like building that B2B influence, where do you see the brands? Like, what is their appetite to kind of invest in it? And is there a gap in the understanding? I mean, are they understanding it correct or not?
Yeah, I'll start with the first one. I think, at least in this part of the world, our part of the world, in Southeast Asia, Greater South Asia, there's a desire, but I would say, if I have to give it on a scale of 10, probably 2 or 3. It's Influencer marketing is very popular in the B2C side, right? Everyone's
Exactly.
garnering for content, reach,
Yeah.
engagement with TikTok Shop, even
Yeah.
commerce, which is fantastic, right? But on the B2B side, I think it's beginning to happen. I see this with large tech companies like your Microsofts, IBMs, Anthropic, OpenAI, as they scale up in this part of the world. They come from the US, where this has worked, but there's a long way to go, primarily because of the gap that you asked me about. I think the gap is they're trying to sort of use the same B2C formula here, saying, hey, like, without naming clients, I've had a couple of agencies reach out to me saying, hey, this company is launching in Singapore. Are you willing to write content?
Right.
And when I would ask them, hey, what's your objective? Very, very rarely would they say, hey, you know what? Their objective are these 3 business goals of
Right.
hiring these kind of people, or garnering attention from channel partners, or getting access to customers. And it's just around, this is as fresh as last week. And in fact, what even befuddled me was the campaign brief said, right now, we're only going to hire you for 1 post. And I said, just curious, why 1 post? Why not 10? And again, even with 1 post or 10, what's the objective? It's being just measured by LinkedIn likes and comments. But since I knew this agency founder, and I had a deeper chat, then I unpacked that the goal is much larger, because this is a very large tech company from the US looking to set up presence in this part of the world. And the goal is to, like I said, channel partners, government engagement. And that's when I sort of suggested to them, saying, look, here's a broader plan that I can propose, which would include not just digital. They would include workshops, they would include closed door roundtable discussions, they would include training programs, participating in hackathons, all of which, could lead to real B2B conversations, will
Correct.
help us create content, which then I can take back to digital media and we can amplify,
Yeah.
right? So I think that notion of, the beauty of advocacy, thought leadership, hybrid format conversations across digital and real life is completely missing in this part of the world because of that B2C lens.
Yes. And which kind of, leads you to think that when we think about B2B influence, it's by default, we think of only LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, it's really an ecosystem.
Yeah.
It's not just one platform, it's a few platforms, a few initiatives, tied together very seamlessly to solve a certain business problem.
Yeah.
So, do you see like other channels which could be used, but they're not being utilized right now when it comes to building B2B influence?
Absolutely, you're right. Everyone just talks about LinkedIn.
Yes.
Uh, and LinkedIn's amazing, but I think it's just a very small part of the larger puzzle. So to me, I think what's worked in this part, right, and I need to put this in the Asian context, I think this may be true in the Western world, but definitely in the Asian context, face-to-face communication, relationships matter a lot, way more than 100 LinkedIn posts can ever sort of open doors. So what's worked for me is, I'll break it into sort of the digital realm and the physical realm, right? And it's not either or. The digital realm, yes, LinkedIn's, I guess, anchor platform. Although personally, I really wish LinkedIn sort of provides a lot richer tool sets and analytics for influencers and people in general. But for example, Substack has picked up. People
Yes.
are writing and reading long form content on Substack, because it's not like your feed that just the content
Yeah.
vanishes. You have very well structured, and there are so many good journalists and thought leaders who are making good money, right? Which
Absolutely.
is very good. Then you're not sort of, when you're making money through authentic content and through genuine readership, then you're not just peddling influencer posts for $2,000 a
Yeah,
post.
exactly.
It's real, well thought through, well researched content. So Substack is a good one. Podcasts like what we are doing, I think, very popular, because again, genuine real conversation. It's not, you're looking at an individual who can not just write as a keyboard warrior, using Claude or Chat GPT to make polished posts, but you can see, can someone hold a conversation? Can someone participate in a debate? Even if within the podcast world, I'm seeing live podcasts where there's a real audience. So I did one for a client where I was moderating with the client, but it was with a real audience that was relevant to the client. So people could interact and people could see the real leader, right? So I think on the digital medium, whether it's audio, video, YouTube, LinkedIn, Substack, very, very powerful channels. But I think what's worked for me, if I look at the marketing funnel, these are all great to create awareness, engagement, maybe generate some leads. But what's really worked for conversion is, can I take the audience from the digital realm and bring them to maybe a breakfast panel discussion where we are talking about a detailed white paper? Can we have a debate? I love some of these debate formats, which are rare here, but in the US, for example, this works brilliantly. You get two industry leaders from two opposing thought perspectives and get them to debate. uh, Salon lunches or coffee table discussions are great because those are private. You can get people of similar seniority and background to come and debate a topic with Chatham House rules. So to me, I think those informal offline conversations, be it a panel, roundtable, salon lunches, those I think is where the conversion happens. So I think, again, if I take the broader principles of marketing, B2B influencers need to look at different digital channels, both across what I call multimodal: audio, video, text, imagery. Can't just be hiding behind as a keyboard warrior. Again, so that you can put yourself on the line, have a real conversation, no matter how flawed the language or grammar may be, and then take it to offline, so that then you can ultimately, this needs to drive business results. If all of this does not lead to new lead generation, better CSAT scores, new client acquisition, then I think it remains vanity.
So, keyboard warrior, that's a term or a phrase that has been part of the online lexicon, right? Now, on top of that, we have AI, which can produce content in a matter of seconds, right? So, in a world where there is so much of AI content, what is it that requires human voices to stand out? And that human voice is really important within the B2B context.
Great one. I have sort of a framework which is around three things, right? Based on people who I like, who I follow, and I enjoy sort of reading. One is, very often they have access to, or they are involved in new research, right? Primary research. So they're not just peddling stuff that you can find on Google and repurposing it. So they are involved in or have access to research. Secondly, originality of ideas. You're right that AI can help us shape things, they can make it polished. But I think what I find, some of the people who have original ideas, then can they make it real by sharing real examples? Can they give their point of view? And that's only possible if they themselves are aware and know what they stand for. So if I am talking about DEI, for example, I need to know what my stance is, irrespective of the political landscape of what Trump says. I need to know where do I stand. And even in the current environment, if I am for DEI, I got to hold my ground, right? So I think having access to research, having novel ideas and thoughts that you record and you sort of crystallize, and also then sharing real examples. I think, to me, these are three critical elements, which just makes a human being real, whether it's on LinkedIn, Substack, or if you get someone to just speak at an event. I think that will come through. Because without that, it's manufactured, the passion doesn't come through. If you're not opinionated, then again, you don't have a voice, you don't stand on a particular topic. So to me, I think these are three things that I find which is very important for business leaders within the guardrails of what your company allows or doesn't allow, right? And so, for example, if a company doesn't allow me to express my strong views on a topic, I rather not air it. I rather not air a half-baked, post or a thesis just because it toes the line. I would rather do it in an environment where I can. Sometimes it can be closed doors where it's not public, but I'm allowed to share my opinion with a disclaimer that, look, this is my personal view, right? So going to your question, AI is great for sort of polishing my language, maybe putting things into a particular structure. But I would urge everyone to sort of firstly know where you stand, have access to new research, and then be as real with your examples. And one small technicality that I find in authentic leaders is they use tools like Whisper Flow to just quickly use audio as a mechanism to speak their mind and just voice dump. Because when we are all taught to write in school, we have been taught to write proper prim and proper English and grammar.
Correct.
So writing is great as an end product, but I think when you're dumping your ideas, I try not to write. I just do a voice dump using a tool like Whisper Flow. So if I'm in the cab, something comes, I literally whisper on WhatsApp and it's voice dumped. And then I can use language to sort of, write it well. But yeah, so these are 3, 4 things that I observe and I try and do myself. But I've seen people who do this well, they come through as real, authentic, no matter what the modality, what the room looks like, digital or in a real setting.
Whisper Flow, I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, try it
That's
out.
really
It's one of my favorite AI tools. It's brilliant.
Coming down to the last question, I think LinkedIn as a platform has changed. Sometimes you don't know which direction it's going, right? So, are there any pet peeves of LinkedIn behavior that you see online?
I think talking about pet peeves, I'll sort of break it into two: pet peeves against LinkedIn, the platform, and pet peeves against the content creators. And there's a linkage. So, LinkedIn has been around for so long. It's been bought by Microsoft. And by now, I would have expected a few things to be different. I'll start with three things, right? One is this whole gamifying the algorithm. Now, I get LinkedIn needs to try and sort of figure out what algorithm works best for them. But what that has done, it has sort of encouraged the content creators to do different silly things, in my opinion, to gamify. So very often you would see posts where the imagery looks very polished, sunset view, something very sexy, but has nothing to do with the content, right? Maybe that helps the likes and the reshares. Sometimes it's to do with the brevity of the post. LinkedIn sort of limits the number of words, maybe with the thought process that in social media people only want to see short form content, but that's not true given long 3, 4 hour podcast. That's not true when it comes to Substack content. There is an audience. So I think those are two things. Third, I think from a pet peeve lens is, I think LinkedIn can offer so much to B2B professionals in terms of, if I have say 10,000 connections, I need to know a segmented view of where are these people, what do they do, which countries do they live in, can I reach out to them through segmented messaging campaigns. I think that and analytics in terms of richness of what sort of content is doing well, etc., that's limited. Even with Claude, building APIs is harder. It is a walled garden like Facebook. So I think there are certain things that LinkedIn, I think, can do better. And I hope folks from Microsoft will sort of make it inclusive of the whole 365 platform with Copilot. There's a lot more AI sort of AI infusion that can happen. On content sort of creators, like I said, I think it starts not with the platform, with themselves. My humble sort of opinion is people should not gamify that platform in terms of hashtags and taggings and these irrelevant photographs. I think, some of the things that many people do is you will start seeing people who will write a piece of content, but because of the algorithm, they'll have to like it themselves first or share a comment, or you will see these peddlers who will say, hey, here's the thought-provoking piece of content, but write this particular word in your comment to get the detailed PDF, right? Again, I don't think you can build a real influence that way. You can gamify the platform, you can gain audiences, you can get millions of likes and reaches. But again, going back to the original point, why are we doing all of this? Because we want genuine, unmanufactured, unpolished credibility. Because your original question said, how did I know that my personal brand lent credibility to my business?
Yes.
So I think we need to tie it back to the business goals. That is all of this helping my corporate brand? Is it creating new business opportunities. We spoke about the fact that all of this needs to lead to offline real world business decisions. Because in the B2B realm, I think we need to remember two things: that even though we call it B2B, but at the end of the day, there is a human behind the B.
Yes.
And it's not just one human, it's a committee, it's a
Yeah.
collective.
Yeah.
So you need to find ways to convince and influence not a human but a collective group of decision makers who are humans. So I think if the content and the approach is not real, authentic, if the content doesn't evoke emotion, uh, I don't think you're doing justice. So yeah, those are my pet peeves. I think the tech aspect of the pet peeves are solvable, but the human aspect needs a lot more awareness, education. I think we were speaking that, yes, there is AI slop, but there's a lot of human slop as well.
Yes.
And I think that only, as with any topic, goes only when we sort of have lighthouses of good examples, good awareness education programs. And I'm hoping you guys are going to go down that path.
Well,
So
that's the goal. Thank you so much, Prantik, for sharing your insights. And I think there's a lot to kind of pick from there. So there's a lot of food for thought. So thank you again for being so generous with your sharing.
no, thank you for having me, and all the best to Pauline and you. I again genuinely believe that what you guys are embarking on or have embarked on has a lot of legs. It's the need of the hour, especially in our part of the world. And yeah, hopefully we can collaborate on a few things.
And that's Influence Unlocked. See you at the next episode.